Which of the following is not a part of the erector spinae muscle group? A. The iliacostalis. B. The longissimus. C. The spineless. D. The trapezius. The answer is D. The trapezius. The main muscle groups that make up the erector spinae are the iliacostalis muscles, the longissimus muscles, and the spineless. The trapezius is not a part of the erector spinae group. Which of the following is a muscle of mastication? A. The temporalis. B. The lateral tragoid. C. The medial tragoid. D. All of these. The answer is D. All of these. Mastication relies on four major muscles: the masseter, the temporalis, the medial tragoid, and the lateral tragoid. Which of the following cranial nerve, CN, innervates the genioglossus? A. CN4, the trochlear nerve. B. CN12, the hypoglossal nerve. C. CN9, the glossopharyngeal nerve. D. CN7, the facial nerve. The answer is B. CN12, the hypoglossal nerve. The genioglossus, the main muscle that protrudes the tongue, is innervated by the hypoglossal nerve, or CN12. What is the origin of the inferior oblique muscle of the eye? A. The sphenoid bone. B. The infraorbital margin. C. The annulus of Sien. D. The maxilla. The answer is D. The maxilla. The inferior oblique muscle of the eye, an extrinsic muscle that externally rotates and abducts the eye, has its origin on the orbital surface of the maxilla. What is the action of the sternocleidomastoid? A. Laterally flex the neck. B. Accessory respiratory muscle. C. Extend the neck. D. All of these are correct. The answer is D. All of these are correct. The sternocleidomastoid, a long muscle that originates on the manubrium and the clavicle and inserts into the mastoid process, has several functions. When functioning unilaterally, it rotates the head, flexes the neck, and laterally flexes the neck. When functioning bilaterally, This muscle also extends the neck and is an accessory respiratory muscle. Calcium is required for all of the following except dash. A. Muscle contraction. B. Nerve conduction. C. Blood clotting. D. All of these require calcium. The answer is D. All of these require calcium. Calcium is essential for many processes of the body, including but not limited to nerve conduction, muscle contraction, blood clotting, and bone mineralization. Which of the following lists the zones of mitochondrial ossification in the correct order? A. Resting, proliferation, maturation, calcification, ossification. B. Maturation, proliferation, resting, ossification, calcification. C. Proliferation, calcification, maturation, ossification, resting. D. Proliferation, maturation, resting, calcification, ossification. The answer is A. Resting, proliferation, maturation, calcification, ossification. There are 5 distinct zones in regions of mitochondrial ossification. These are the resting zone, the zone of proliferation, the zone of maturation, the zone of calcification, and the zone of ossification. In what zone of mitochondrial ossification do the chondrocytes typically die off, leaving cavities for colonization by osteoprogenitor cells? A. The zone of proliferation. B. The zone of ossification. C. The zone of maturation. D. The resting zone. E. The zone of calcification. The answer is E. The zone of calcification. The behavior of cells in the zones of mitochondrial ossification is as follows: the resting zone, normal resting chondrocytes within hyaline cartilage. The zone of proliferation, rapid mitosis of chondrocytes. The zone of maturation, hypertrophy of chondrocytes. The zone of calcification, the death of chondrocytes due to lack of nutrients and inability to eliminate cellular wastes. The zone of ossification, migration of osteoprogenitor cells into the cavities left behind by dead chondrocytes and mineralization of newly formed bone. Which of the following mineral gives bone its rigid structure? A. Phosphate. B. Calcium. C. Collagen. D. Hydroxyapatite. The answer is D. Hydroxyapatite. The rigid structure of bone is created by hydroxyapatite, a calcium apatite that contains both calcium and phosphate in the formula, CA5PO4, 3, OH. Both calcium and phosphate are necessary to create bone structure. A deficiency of either will degrade the structural integrity of the bone matrix. Last, collagen is a protein rather than a mineral, and primarily functions to add flexibility to bone in order to prevent fracture. Bones are made up of which of the following three tissue types? A. Compact bone, white marrow, and red marrow. B. Cancellous bone, spongy bone, and trabecular bone. C. Cancellous bone, fat, and bone marrow. D. Cortical bone, cancellous bone, and bone marrow. The answer is D. Cortical bone, cancellous bone, and bone marrow. Bones are made up of the following three primary tissue types. 1. Cortical bone, which is the hard exterior layer, also referred to as compact bone. 2. Cancellous bone, which is the porous bone tissue that fills the center of bones, also referred to as spongy bone or trabecular bone tissue, and 3. Bone marrow, a hematopoietic tissue that fills spaces in trabecular bone.